Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This is a historical, gothic, horror fantasy novel. We follow our main character, Lenore. Her entire family is dead. All she really has is her husband of 10 years, Henry, who's like a rich guy, but he's rich in industry, while she has somewhat of a family title, but she's sort of destitute and penniless because her whole family is dead. So it's a marriage of contract, of not convenience, but of strategic planning to help both of their situations. He gets sort of like a title and esteem and, a good wife, and she gets money. So they've been together 10 years, and Lenore has just been tasked with renovating this new house they have, this old manor, and prepping it for this big hunting party that Henry is throwing with like all of these important people like earls and stuff, because he wants to introduce himself into higher society and climb the ranks. Success is very important to him. And on the way to their new house, they witness a carriage crash. And out of the carriage comes a woman named Carmilla, who they, as good Samaritans, help out, and they bring her home to the manor with them to help her recuperate. And then it's Carmilla from Carmilla, the Sheridan J. Le Fanu book. She's there, living in their house, and she's weird, and she wakes up in the middle of the night and walks around, and Lenore starts having weird dreams about her and Carmilla being in her room, and then when she starts speaking to Carmilla, Carmilla's not got a filter. She's very frank, she's very direct. She makes Lenore question basically her entire life and all of the things she's been repressing, and how strong her marriage is, and how much this life is what she wants, and how much she is doing what's just expected of her from society, from her husband, from her aunt who died, who like raised her after her parents died and was like really cruel. And so basically this is Lenore's self-discovery journey of desire. This book starts with a quote from the Vavitch, which low-key I'm kind of tired of seeing. "Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?" And that is the premise for this novel, is Lenore sort of going off the rails according to society, well, and also us, descending sort of into violence and desire and freedom, but in a self-destructive way. So I suppose the theme of this book, or the overall message, is to not repress yourself, because the longer you keep your true self and your true wants repressed within you, it's going to bottle up and explode into this very sort of destructive, unstoppable force. So if that sounds like your thing, you'll enjoy this. It's very well written. Absolutely stunning prose. Beautiful, totally like fits with the time, but it's still like readable. I've read Carmilla, the original. I didn't really like it because it's fucking old. I can't read old shit. That's just me. I just don't like old stuff. It's just not as good. I'm a contemporary reader. I don't like reading the classics. So this, for me, is like the best version of a book set during that time period, a story set during that time period. And I think it's able to explore some themes that the original Carmilla isn't, because it's old. So the original Carmilla story, if you're unaware, she was like the first vampire. She's the first lesbian vampire. In that book, she has like a scheme with her mom, I think. I'm confusing some of this with the web series Carmilla, which is completely different and is like a totally alternate universe, complete retelling, modern day story. But in the original story, which I haven't read in like 10 years, so I don't remember, and also I didn't like it, so I don't remember it. In the original story, Carmilla has a carriage wreck, fakes a carriage wreck to get into this man's house, I believe, and he has a young daughter, like a teenage daughter, who ends up sort of falling for Carmilla, and it's like a forbidden lesbian lovers kind of situation, but also like Carmilla is corrupting her. And like, because it's from that time, like the lesbianism isn't like super duper explicit or anything. And some of the darker places that this novel goes, Carmilla just isn't able to go because of the conventions of the time. Now, someone who really remembers Carmilla can give you like a better like analysis of where these two overlap and where they expand and differ. But I'm not that person, because I don't fucking remember that shit. So there's some overlap, like with the fake carriage stuff, with the vampire stuff. Although there's not a lot of that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So like the fake carriage and like living in this person's house to like, you know, like she's sort of squatting and like pretending to be ill so that she can't leave, corrupting the lady of the house. There's some interconnected themes there, obviously. But I will say the Carmilla element, I suppose the Carmilla character is really just a very static character. If you're reading this because you want more of Carmilla as a character and like want to know more of her story, this isn't going to give you any of that. I think the ending kind of fumbled the Carmilla bit. Like, she is a very prominent character throughout most of this, and then there's a point later on where she dips away and is like absent for a lot of the third act, and then she comes back at the very end. But we don't get like really any resolution to the Carmilla character. It's not really a resolution because she doesn't really have a character arc at all. She's just a catalyst for Lenore and her descent into madness and discontentedness. So she really just functions as a plot device rather than a dynamic character with any. I mean, she has personality, but she doesn't have an arc and she doesn't grow. She doesn't have like a storyline. She's just there to cause some chaos. I did have some qualms with that. I think the ending could have featured more Carmilla and like really like brought the two of these two together. I mean, it does in the end, but like at the very, very end. And then I had some questions about why she was pursuing Lenore, really, because we get some really good horror elements throughout this book. This isn't like super, super horrific. It's very much just in the gothic atmosphere. But there are some really well done, cool horror moments. There's a few of them scattered throughout, and they're basically all centered around Carmilla going into town and sort of corrupting other people, but very instantaneously. So like she can just like go to someone and like fuck with their mind and make them do something. Like there's a young girl who murders a chicken with her bare hands and like starts eating it. Those like horror scenes get like progressively more horrific throughout. There's a scene earlier on than that where she makes the maid like eat hair out of a hairbrush and like makes them hunger. Hunger is a big thing. But so she can just like instantaneously corrupt people. So I didn't really understand why she's playing the long game with Lenore. And again, the carriage crash, the whole carriage crash scheme is an element of the original book because that's what like they always do to ingratiate themselves into a family and then find a target and then corrupt the target and bring them back as like a sacrifice. I think they're sacrificing people, or is that just in the web series? I don't remember. But that's like a common thing that Carmilla always does. And in this book, it doesn't really serve a purpose other than getting her in the house. But like, why does she want to be in Lenore's house and play the long game with her if she could just like go up to her and mess with her life? I mean, maybe you could argue that she's attracted to Lenore and then they form like a sexual relationship, and then at the end of the book there's, you know, inklings that they're going to be intertwined in each other's lives for much longer. But we don't really get that on the page. She doesn't say that's her motivations. Lenore never asks her like, why are you doing this to these other people, but why did you not do it to me? Why are you doing something like totally slow burn and different with me? That just isn't fleshed out. I think honestly the the slow burn aspect just comes from the original with like the carriage scheme, and then the other points were just there for like little moments of horror and like interest. Those are good moments, but I think like, I don't know, like the motivational ideas clash. We don't really know why Carmilla's messing with any of these other side characters either. It's just like for fun. They're fun to read, but like I don't really know Carmilla's intentions other than to sow chaos. I think that's all Carmilla really wants, is to sow chaos. And we also don't get a lot of the vampire aspect. There's a couple of references to Carmilla probably drinking Lenore's blood, But she never really like even focuses on that. She's never like, Carmilla's sucking my blood. What sort of creature is she? The word vampire is never used. They don't talk about sort of supernatural creatures, but you get the sense that she is a vampire. So it is like a fantasy novel. It's not just like some crazy lady. And she can clearly manipulate people into doing terrible things. So she is not just a human, but the book doesn't really explore that in any way. I suppose that's something that will be addressed between these characters after the events of the novel. This novel is really centered on Lenore coming to terms with her marriage and her terrible husband, which I did really like the way this is introduced. At first, he doesn't seem like such a bad man. You get the sense that, he's not super attentive to her. They sleep in separate rooms. They don't have kids, but they sort of stop trying. He's probably cheating on her, but like it was a marriage of convenience anyway, so it's like, nah, and he doesn't seem like such a bad guy. But that's because we're getting it from Lenore's perspective, and she's sort of turned a blind eye to a lot of his misgivings, or she just hasn't really thought about it until Carmilla comes into her life and puts these ideas in her head and makes her think about it. And so over the course of the novel, you get reveals that Henry is a pretty bad person and has been a bad person for a long time, which I liked, because a lot of these books, this is a very common theme. I feel like every like gothic, not even gothic, just like every book set in this time period is just like, sexism bad. Wasn't it terrible for women? And that's like just sort of the theme, is women rebelling against the system and like realizing their oppression. So this is not a new idea at all under really any circumstances. But a lot of these novels start with the man just being evil, and maybe the wife doesn't realize it because that's just how men are, or she doesn't want to think about it, but we as the reader immediately understand that this is a terrible person. But in this book, the perspective is done really well, so we don't immediately see this man as a totally terrible person. We discover it along with Lenore. So that's good writing. This whole thing is good writing. Again, it kind of sounds like I'm ragging on it for like some of the Carmilla inconsistencies, or like the lack of importance around that, and just the incorporation of that original text is, there's some problems there, like legitimate problems. But then I also sounded like I was ragging on it when I said that this is not a new idea. This isn't a unique premise. I feel like every historical novel is sort of about this, if it's not a romance. Every historical novel about women is like this exact story. I feel like I've read this book before. I feel like I will read this book like 50 more times. I feel like there's like 1,000 books that are almost exactly like this. But this one is one of the best written ones you're going to find. It was enjoyable, and I guess there's not really a problem with repeated themes in books. I suppose there's a lot of novels that are like that. I mean, I read a lot of romance novels, and really they're all the same thing, aren't they? But they do have like just more variety in like the setting or the personality of the characters. And I feel like this is real classic English countryside, wealthy people in the 1800s, and like real, standard personality of a person from that time frame, because the historical period sort of limits what you can do, or like what these people are realistically allowed to be. I mean, you could do something crazy with it. If that was really your intention, you could write a really good, unique historical novel where people are really singularly interesting in a way that has never been seen before. But that's kind of not the story, I guess. The story is really about how like these normal people are sort of dying inside, and that was just kind of a thing that happened and that women had to accept. So that's not this novel, but this novel does succeed in being what it wants to be, which is that historical novel about sexism, about a woman who is corrupted, but sort of in a sympathetic way. Like, we understand her struggles, and she does some things that are, unforgivable. Like, she does some bad things. Like, there's murder and stuff going on here. But, like, we understand where she's coming from as a reader, and so it's very sympathetic madness, which is also like a staple of the horror genre and the gothic horror genre. So this isn't like the most unique gothic horror book in the entire world. but it's very well executed. And if you're a really big fan of that genre, you'll like this. I did like this book. I think the Carmilla stuff is maybe my gripe, because I don't really know why Carmilla was here. I guess. I could understand something like the Carmilla web series where you completely rework the tale and put it in a modern setting and make it just completely different. But this is like the same era that Carmilla was in, so it's not really that different, and she's sort of doing the same scheme. I think the character is a bit different. She's a bit more just like an agent of chaos, and she's a bit more mature because she's not seducing a teenager, she's seducing like a grown woman. And so there's a lot more play with that. I don't know how old Carmilla is in this. I'm gonna guess older. I don't remember how old she is in the original book either, but she's seducing a teenager. So like I'm assuming she's not that old. I'm talking old in human years, not vampire years. She's old in vampire years, I'm sure. I don't know how old she is in vampire years in this book either. We don't get any of her backstory really. So like the vampire stuff is like not there, not addressed. So like I don't know how old she is. I don't know how many times she's done this. But anyway, I didn't really get, I don't know, it's not changed that much. But it's also not like so ingrained in like the original that we just get way more backstory about this character, and like we're really in the world of Carmilla, and this is just like another one of her schemes, and she's the main character. She's definitely not the main character. I don't really know why Carmilla's here. Because again, she's just a plot device. I feel like we could have had any random, possibly, maybe even not supernatural catalyst to make Lenore go on this journey. I don't know why it had to be Carmilla specifically. I don't know if that's just a marketing tactic, or if she was just like a fan of Carmilla. It's kind of like a Carmilla fanfiction. It's like, I really like Carmilla, but I don't want to see her get it on with a teenager. I want to see her in a more complex adult setting, but in like the same historical era, doing the same things. I don't know. But even if it was a marketing thing, I don't know that you like love this if you're just reading it for the Carmilla aspect. I didn't actually know this was based on Carmilla when I went into this. This is like a pretty popular book. I've heard a lot about it, but like I don't read descriptions. I just kind of go into things. If it has lesbians, I just put it on my TBR, and I don't even look to see what it's about. I'll just read anything. So I feel like this didn't have to be Carmilla. I didn't think that was like central to the novel. I don't think it's like the best executed version of a Carmilla fanfiction that it could be if you really wanted to focus on Carmilla, but this author doesn't. Like, she wants to focus on Lenore. I mean, it's fine. It works. It's not like that big a gripe. Again, I had a good time with this. I'd say this is like a 4-star, 4.5 stars. Well written. Absolutely beautiful prose. I like wrote down a couple lines and then I stopped because I was like, I'm not gonna read these out. But like every once in a while I'd be like, ooh, that was a good line, or ooh, that was really phrased in a nice way. So the strength of the writing really carries this. I mean, and it's a cool premise. I mean, the book carries itself. It's not like one thing really props this up, but it's a well executed version of what it wants to be for the most part. And I'd recommend it if you're interested in gothic horror. This made me want to read Kat Dunn. There's a book by Kat Dunn that I keep hearing about called Bitterthorn that like I really want to read. My library doesn't have it. And I'm like, curses. This made me really excited to read that because I've heard so much about that, and now I know how strong Kat Dunn's writing is, and I'm like, I want more. Give me more. I don't think my library like has any other books by her. Tragic. But I think this is an author to look out for because I think they're a good writer. She's a good writer. And I would like to read more of her books in the future.